Coming up on this edition of Carolina Insider, a 5 Points business struggles with the coronavirus, but not because of restrictions.
And they are really suffering right now.
Plus, how voter intimidation may have impacted this year's election. But first, find out the latest statewide election numbers and how it will impact our state. Carolina Insider starts now. Good afternoon, and welcome to this edition of Carolina Insider. I'm Noah Patheja. With Election Day in our rear mirror, the race for president remains too close to call. Votes are still being counted in Nevada and Pennsylvania, and a final outcome could still be a day away. We do have numbers from South Carolina, where all races are pretty much over. Lindsey Graham leads with more than 56%, and Jamie Harrison trailing at about 42%. That's a difference of about 320,000 votes, with 91% of precincts reporting as of Wednesday morning. And an upset of sorts in the 1st Congressional District. Nancy Mace has been declared the winner, beating Joe Cunningham with 98% of the vote reported. We will continue to update you as numbers change. This week, the possibility of voter intimidation had law enforcement on high alert. With Election Day behind us, we've seen some incidents of concern. In one, police pepper sprayed protesters in North Carolina, and a lawsuit has already been filed in that case. No incidents were reported here in the Midlands. Trey Martin has more.
This election has been nothing short of unique. Between the COVID-19 pandemic and social reform movements across the country, political science professor Chelsea Estancona believes this election is different than previous ones.
It feels as if the stakes of this election are in some ways, or at least for some voters, very much life and death. This is related to the policy response that we might get out of an election.
Recently, President Trump urged his supporters to watch the polls closely and even question the integrity of the election. The rhetoric left some critics wondering whether the statement could lead to voter intimidation.
I don't see intimidation being an issue where I will be, but that's not to say that it is a bigger issue in other places. So my main concern in my polling place will be COVID.
The public health student at USC is most worried about health and safety and making a good choice for who could best lead America out of the pandemic.
Excited because I have done my research. I've kept up with current events. I feel like I'm making an informed decision when I go to vote.
An informed decision that millions of American voters hope will happen, free from intimidation. For Carolina Insider, I'm Trey Martin.
Speaking of elections, USC has been selected as one of America's top universities for student voter registration. Washington Monthly rated South Carolina among the top 100 public and private colleges with a registration rate above 85%. This is good news as younger voters have become more involved in this year's election. One of the biggest issues in this year's election is the handling of COVID and how best to keep Americans safe while also protecting businesses. With more on COVID's local impact in today's Soda City scene is Kourtney Vermillion. Kourtney?
Thanks, Noah. Although we're still in the middle of a pandemic, the state of South Carolina recently lifted seating restrictions on bars and restaurants. Since those regulations have been removed, videos have gone viral on social media showing bars in 5 Points packed to the brim with people, many not socially distancing or wearing masks. Restaurant owners in 5 Points community like Village Idiot owner Brian Glenn say these videos are taking a huge toll on business, even though some businesses are being responsible.
You have people who own a shoe shop or, a framing shop, and they are really suffering right now. And now they're suffering more because there's a narrative that 5 Points isn't a safe place to go.
Glenn owns 3 restaurants in Columbia and says that his business in 5 Points has by far taken the hardest hit since the beginning of the pandemic. He urges customers to look past the videos and remember that a wide range of businesses are struggling to survive in this community. Many of them are nearly empty throughout the daylight hours. Back to you, Noah.
Thanks, Kourtney. Finally today, with all the recent stress in our lives, you may need a moment to take it all in and reflect. Students can visit the traditional Day of the Dead ofrenda this week at the Russell House Union. It will be in the Intersection Lounge. You can share a prayer, light a candle, or bring a family memento as an offering to the altar. This ceremony will take place from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. today and tomorrow. That's it for this edition of Carolina Insider, a student production here in the Kennedy Greenhouse studio. and School of Journalism and Mass Communications. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here on Friday.